Hello and welcome to this week's episode on Amplify. My name is Sanchi Singh and today I'm looking into sustainability in jewelry design and production. Now, whether it's the big fat Indian wedding or the birth of a baby, jewelry plays a key role in Indian society and culture. Indeed, buying or gifting jewelry on certain days is considered auspicious and is encouraged. And jewelry in general has high emotional significance. But jewelry is also a notoriously opaque industry where supply chains tend to be quite complex, and the impact of mining and processing is not addressed sufficiently. So, how can India reform its relationship with jewelry? How can the industry address lapses in ethical standards and work towards transparency? As a starting point, what do socially responsible business practices look like? And are consumers in a price-sensitive market like India willing to pay more for products with higher ethical standards? Hello and welcome to this week's episode on Amplify. I have with me today Kavya and Sasha Garewal, founders of Outhouse Jewellery here in India. With a shared passion for jewelry design and manufacturing, in a span of 8 years, they've won the Vogue Fashion Fund in 2015, have had 3 shows at Lakme Fashion Week, and have been featured on the Forbes Asia 30 Under 30 list in 2016. Outhouse is one of India's leading jewelry houses, and I'm so excited to have the founders, the sisters, here for this episode to talk about their brand, sustainability initiatives, and the jewelry industry at large. So, hi, Sasha and Kavya. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Sanchi. Thank you for having us on board.
Hi, Sanchi. Thank you for having us. I'm quite excited about the podcast.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. So, just to contextualize this and start at the very beginning, what inspired you to start Outhouse? What gaps did you see in the jewelry industry that you thought were not being filled, essentially?
Firstly, I would just begin with, letting you know about our inclination towards jewelry, which started at a very young age. Because, what you see as growing up becomes a part of your embroidery. And my mom had a flair for jewelry, and she had also been passed on some beautiful heritage pieces. And somehow we were very inclined towards jewelry since a very young age, which led us to also college in jewelry and jewelry smithing. We were also students of art in school, and I think the combination of jewelry with creativity led us to doing jewelry design, and then henceforth going and also working with different themes. Like Kabe worked with Eddie Borgo. She also went to GI to study colored gemstones and diamonds. And I had started working with the Inditex group, which primarily has Zara, Massimo Dutti. So I was working on understanding the global format of jewelry. So I think when we started off, we did not as such see a gap in the market. We did not do a market study. We wanted to bring forth something which was missing, I would say, in the area of fashion when it comes down to jewelry. There are lots of precious jewelers. People have made their names as far as jewelry is concerned. We have Cartier, we have Van Cleef, and we have some very good jewelers in India which are based out of Jaipur, and of course now across the country as well. But I think the fact that something which was affordable, also designer and fashionable, not being available was something that we focused on, but it wasn't something that we reached out after understanding a gap in the market. This is what we wanted to put forward out there, because there was hardly any material play that you can do with precious jewelry. So we wanted to do a lot of material mixture with jewelry and bring a piece of art to people that they could, enjoy wearing and celebrating. And henceforth, it led on to making Outhouse.
Also, I feel pieces which are more like Sasha said very clearly, more affordable. Like when we were coming up with the line, it was primarily like just an idea to bring about something which we would love wearing ourselves, because, when we came back from our education, we just felt that there was nothing which was midway. Like in India, there was either very, very low price brass jewelry, which people usually call junk because it did not carry the weightage of having a precious metal, or there was precious jewelry. So apart from that, there was no middle ground. And I feel like for us, we've always sort of designed thinking what we would like to wear and how we would like to style this outhouse girl. I mean, when we were initially starting, the whole idea was really around the pure soul of me and Sasha as people and what we would like us to be wearing. And the beauty of this jewelry, I also feel, is like it's affordable, so you can change, like you're not stuck with buying like a 12 lakh rupee piece. You can buy something beautiful and a piece of art at a very affordable price. So I feel like they are also pieces which can be kept for a longer period of time. I mean, we still have clients who sort of wear our collections from the time we started the brand, and still find it trendy and interesting. So I think that's the beauty of it, by bringing about design which are different.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting point that both of you raised, which is about accessibility, right, at the end of the day. Because, I mean, for the longest time, jewelry, at least in India, has always been reserved for special occasions, usually weddings, right? I mean, that's the primary reason or the primary goal around which jewelry is bought or gifted or exchanged or whatever. And also, this jewelry is almost always high-end jewelry, which is, by Tanishq or by Joy Lucas, which are brands in India. So I wanted to know, what were some of the challenges that you faced while starting out a brand that is essentially an antithesis to the Tanishqs of India?
So I think the first few initial challenges were purely metal related, but we did not really face a big challenge with respect to that because people love the designs. I feel like in everything which you do, design plays a very essential role. And that is something which we both saw because, there was no concept of demi-fine or braid jewelry in the country. People were more like value-centric, like, okay, because initially when we used to give a lot of interviews too, we were really asked that how do you think this kind of jewelry will be accepted? And honestly, we were told many times this may not do well, this would do well, a bunch of opinions that come through. But I feel we didn't take that as a challenge. We actually felt like it's great and we should continue doing what we're doing because this is an entirely new, different market. Like today, there are a lot of brides who wear the brand and they wear it for the main day, they wear it for the reception, they wear it for the pre-wedding functions as well,
Yeah.
Because I think the idea of wearing real jewelry on a wedding still exists. I'm talking about a lot of Indian weddings based in India and even destination weddings. So I feel that was one of the challenges which we did initially face, but we didn't take it as a challenge, to be honest. Manufacturing, for sure, because initially we started with a very small studio in Shahpurjat in Delhi. And slowly, after working with a lot of like suppliers or, people who used to give stones to us or metals to us from Jaipur, we set up our own manufacturing, which was a great thing for the brand to do because we took everything in-house. But apart from that, I wouldn't really say there was any challenges of being a woman entrepreneur in the business. I think people have always sort of applauded and always pushed us to do better. So I feel like when it comes to challenges, I wouldn't say there were like massive challenges.
Also, Sanchi, the thing is that we live in a country which has a very traditional mindset towards jewelry. Mm-hmm. They think jewelry is an investment and it should be bought for special occasions like you have talked about.
Yeah.
And then, when a child is born, they'll give the gold piece because it's a value that they might be able to receive back once they grow up. So it's always looked at as an investment. It's not actually looked at as a piece of art or like how you look at fashion. You wear couture or you wear, if your mom would wear a piece during a wedding, she may have preserved it, she may not have preserved it, but jewelry goes on down like that. But I think what I would say that which has been a great victory for us is that the time we entered the market, we had brought in something new. We had a lot of other competitors who were doing different things in silver, but our metal was brass, and we still do that. It's called demi-fine jewelry, which is plated in 22 karat gold. So what we give is we give design, we give longevity, we give affordability, and at the same time, we increased our portfolio of products from not just products for jewelry for occasion wear, but also day wear, and then of course doing something which is customized. So we made our own market share. That's what I would say, which wasn't existing. So there was no gap that we were filling, but we created a market share. And then after that, we have seen the rise of many other brands who are now also maybe I would say competitors. It's like, you build a good playground for many other businesses to flourish. And I think that was, I would just say that's a great victory to feel, because breaking a traditional mindset and then bringing in a new market share and of course allowing other people to also flourish in that area is something which I think we've been able to achieve. And we're constantly working on that format to improve our brand ethos and of course, our jewelry, and now we're ventured into bags and henceforth maybe more lifestyle accessories as well.
Yeah, and you started out in 2012, right? And we sort of
Right.
touched upon how perhaps consumer tastes might have slightly been different then. I remember I was, I think, in my final year of school, I think, at that point. But, I don't remember at that point in time that the conversation around jewelry was quite so contemporary. There wasn't this discussion around bridge jewelry as your brand is about and as you talk about. So do you think that consumer preferences have evolved since you started out?
So I would give, preference to just 2 points here. One thing would be travel. Travel has increased tremendously, and hence the exposure of people. People were not traveling the way everyone travels now. People are going off for a holiday every second, third month, and their exposure has increased. And second thing is social media. We did not have social media. We did not have accessibility to people across the globe. We know what a person is doing on a daily basis, sitting in a different part of the world. Then we also can, get a ticket and travel across the globe. It's not those summer holidays or winter holidays which exist anymore. So I think the consumer has become very, very aware, and the exposure has increased. Everybody wants to look good. Everybody understands fashion, and everybody's trying in their own area to look better, feel good. And that's how I think also fast fashion came about. So I think the awareness through exposure and at the same time social media, which has amplified it to another level, and accessibility to shop it through social media is the way the consumer has groomed over a period of time.
Kavya, would you like to add to that?
No, I think she's pretty much said it all, because I think trends have definitely evolved, and brands. So we've never sort of followed a trend which is happening anywhere in the world. Whenever we even look at WGSN, we've been mentioned many times for setting the trend in the jewelry industry, especially when we talk about our industry as a whole. And even really many real precious jewelry brands look up to the brand. Nothing to boast about it, but whenever we've attended seminars at FDCI or a bunch of places, and there's a WGSN presentation trend forecast going on, we've always sort of been ahead of the curve, not because of anything, but I think a lot because of traveling. So that's led a lot to the first-hand exposure of what's in the market, because India in many ways is now, of course, caught up in terms of trend, but internationally they work seasons ahead, right?
Yeah.
They work way ahead in terms of what's in trend. But, keeping even the trend in mind, we've never changed the design language of the brand. It's always been even if it's day wear, it's intricate day wear. It's not that, okay, this is in trend, metal jewelry is in trend, we'll do plain metal. It's always binded with the ethos and what the brand really stands for. So I think that is very, very important, because no matter how many trends change, if you as a brand are not standing out in your USP, which is for us, we purely believe design and how we communicate the design. That's the most important thing, because when somebody's coming to you and buying it from you, they should feel they're buying, of course, luxury, affordable luxury, I would say, and something which they can cherish for a longer time,
I think that is very important, because you're evolving the consumer with you. Consumer preferences have changed a lot with travel and social media. But this is a very important point she's made, because what happens, the way you're grooming your brand, it's very important to stay in tune with the time, but also bring something new with that time. And that's how you keep grooming your whole brand synergy to another level, and also evolving the consumer with you. And I think today the consumer wants to stay with you and have a certain sort of alignment with your brand, when they know that you're going to be shown a different kind of trend, and they will evolve with you. So I think that's also very important as a brand, to make the consumer evolve with yourself while you're evolving with the trends across the globe.
Yeah, and I think you made a really great point about the role that social media plays, because in a very short span of time, you can be exposed to this exponential amount of information, which includes trends, which includes conversations that are being had on fashion and jewelry, etc., etc. But I think one of the key trends is perhaps not a trend so much anymore is sustainability, right? I mean, there are all of these people who have been exposed to the various conversations on what it means to be a sustainable brand, or what it means to have sustainability in design, in food, in living spaces, etc. So how important is sustainability to you, and where are you at as a brand with that concept?
So, when the pandemic, started, of course, a lot of brands, I'm not talking about the pandemic, but this was a very big conversation, because I think it just told people to sort of pause and really reflect and sort of see how businesses need to function, whether it's our industry or it's fashion or it's, clothing or if it's interiors. So I feel like for us, actually 2 years back, we ventured into a new vertical for the brand, which is the outhouse bags, the outhouse handhelds. And during that time, I remember we were very, very clear that we don't want to produce bags with an animal skin. Like, we don't want to use anything which is not vegan. Even finding good quality vegan, Sasha looks into that aspect, but finding that also is so difficult at this point, in India at least. Like in China, you can buy a bunch of things, but in India, it's very, very hard. But we were very sure we want to take the more sustainable route. So we explored with many materials like jute, then I think a bunch of others, like Rexine.
A lot of materials which are not, extracted from animals, basically very environmental friendly, or fabrics, or, things which have been woven together to build a product that is away from any kind of, activities that could lead to environmental dysfunction. And also, we just did our first collaboration this year with CERE to support afforestation, so that we could, contribute to some part of the environment. Everybody travels a lot, and often I see all my friends also talk about the fact that, the quality of air that we breathe is so good in countries abroad, or the maintenance of roads is so good. Everybody talks about it, but I think we need to make many changes individually living in this country, so that we can make it a better place and a better environment. And that just starts with us. So we took this initiative, and there are many such initiatives that we are planning to take, and have already started taking in our organization with respect to recycling of metal, sourcing metal or stones from the right resources. It's very difficult to achieve that, honestly, because very few people are transparent about their business practices. So as much as we try to see the people who we are dealing with, they're having the right certifications, and they're following the government laws with respect to maintaining all the standards with respect to
your basic compliances.
Yeah,
I feel like the supply chain, especially in jewelry, is so vast. Like in India, if you go to the biggest jewelry markets, look at Banaras, you look at even this place, Jaipur, there's just this selling from a small store, but they themselves don't know where they're sourcing the stones from. So it's so hard to kind of track that down. So when I talk about sustainability when we look at it as a brand, I feel it's very hard to say it's going to be very easy to achieve it, because it's all a supply chain. Like, we source our stones from Swarovski. Now, Swarovski has a very, very strong mechanism of, telling us how jewelry pieces are made, what are they doing to make jewelry pieces, how are they conserving power, just basic things, like those are very, very important. So transparency is something which I feel the industry has still not adapted to, and it'll take some time. But I think from a supply chain system, I feel it will take time. But as a brand, we've started taking conscious steps in terms of, like Sasha mentioned, we've actually been doing this for 2 years now. We've been recycling all the metal. So anything which kind of gets QC failed or it's sample and we don't use it, so we basically melt that metal and we recycle it. So it's reused, That's the whole idea. And even jewelry, for that matter. Ever since we started, the idea was not to make many pieces, It was to make curated lines. So since fast fashion came in because of social media and a bunch of things happening with fashion, so I think that led to collection after collection. Like autumn winter just finishes, spring summer's right there. spring, summer finishes, autumn, winter is right there. So the whole cycle of fashion and consumerism is so vast and strong, and so it's very fast. So I feel that is something which needs to be slowed down, and this is something which we took. I mean, we took a decision to act upon it consciously with respect to doing lesser collections, but I would say like more drops, I would say, or pieces which can be worn in a more different way. Like when we design pieces as well, it's not like you can wear it one time and it's done. We really, really promote versatility, how you can layer your pieces, how something can be worn in the morning, then you can add something for the evening as well. So I feel like that's very important that you're able to get a lot of, mileage or versatility from one piece which you're buying.
I mean, I have so many comments now. Yeah, so let's start with what you said in terms of transparency in the industry, right? I mean, the sort of line that you're in is in this in-between line, right? So you're in a bridge jewelry, it's slightly different to, like we talked about, the higher end jewelry brands, which just means the Tanishqs and the Joy Lucas, and people who sort of produce this fine jewelry that is normally used for weddings and stuff. And of course, sourcing that precious diamond or gemstone or whatever is actually a really long and opaque process. A lot of people don't know how their supply chains look like, and it's actually a it's an industry that's in its nascent stages of sustainability, right? And then you as a company are taking so many initiatives to work on the consumer side of things. And you also mentioned Swarovski. So when you look at this growing awareness with consumers about sustainability, what are some of the few like takeaways or points that you would like consumers to remember before purchasing jewelry?
So I think if you're talking about the consumer front, that what is it that they should know when they purchase jewelry, or I would say handbags, is if they are interested in the sustainable part of it, is to understand that, our processes and the front line, the other NGOs that we are trying to support and work with. So like you call about CSR activities, which would be the front line, like we're doing with CERE, and the back end activities, which would be the correct sourcing from different allies who we source our products from, and then the kind of SOPs we follow in different departments that are environmental friendly. For example, using more environmental friendly packaging. We have a lot of waste that we throw out. We throw out that waste. We have a certain way of, discarding that waste, which is bound with like a Sewerage Act, and then recycling the metal. So then sourcing the metal from the right place, those people having the right compliance licenses. I think if you have to groom the consumer about a product, it will be more from the front end than the back end, unless we start talking about these things in a big way. And hardly, I would say, that I've seen consumers being interested about back end activities. So it's more on the front end we would do with regard to recycling their jewelry, or we were planning to install a recycling program wherein we wanted to do 2-3 activities with our consumers where they could bring in their previous jewelry and get a certain initiative on their second purchase. And we could also repurpose their jewelry if they had something which they had bought from us previously. So different things in our program that could help them start understanding that we are attached to sustainability. And whereas our bags are concerned, we just had, PETA on board with us just recently. So we could just get the certification while we're selling our bags. I think it's very minuscule activities that you can draw the consumer into understanding that you are working towards sustainability.
Also, Sanjay, I feel like, the brand narrative has to, we're working on this aspect. I wouldn't say Outlets is a completely sustainable brand, but yes, we're taking those measures and steps, which, the sad part in India, I personally feel, is people want to know the price. They're more price driven or design driven. They don't want to understand, okay, how many hours of craftsmanship did it take?
Yeah.
So I feel like this is something which I really educate to all our customers, and they need to understand the minute a brand becomes sustainable. So if you're buying metal from an ethical source, right, they are paying a certain price to their laborers as well. Like all the people who are making, they're manufacturers, there's a certain salary. So sustainability doesn't mean only sourcing. It has to be a part of your working culture within an organization, whether it's ours or the people who we source from, How do they pay their employees? How do they treat their employees? What's the kind of environment they're working in? So, it's a 360 degree. I mean, it's a very vast topic. So I feel that is something which needs to be communicated and be understood by clients. The minute the brand goes very sustainable, for example, the minute we talk of Swarovski is not cheap. They're very expensive, but they come from a source. Of course, it's a great, great brand name, but they also stand by certain principles and ethics which they want their brands who associate with them to sort of communicate to their clients. Otherwise, there are multiple brands. I mean, there are also a lot of brands which do plastic stones. There are multiple designer brands who are using all these things, and same way using Swarovski. So I feel transparency is the core principle which needs to be applied from the brand to the consumer and from the supplier to the brand. Yeah. Only then I feel like it's an acceptance, like if you're buying tomorrow, if you're buying buying Tiffany, right? They associate themselves with a certain price because it's manufacturing, though the metal may not be real, the metal may be semi-precious, but they have certain compliances which they follow, and those compliances also come at a cost. Yeah. So everything needs to be, added to that value, and consumers need to understand what the brand stands for, because I feel the biggest thing as an Indian market is it's very price sensitive. It's still, pandemic of course has made it more price sensitive, but with COVID as well, people have always been like, okay, what's the best price I can do? What discount can I get? It's a very discount oriented market, So I just feel like it's so hard. It's true. Like I've seen many cities, you go from north to south, people just want to bargain, but they don't understand what goes into making those pieces, how many hours of craftsmanship, the labor of love which goes into everything which you make. So I feel consumers, even though brands are coming up and they're talking strongly about how they produce, what kind of dyes are they using, how the stones are produced, but many consumers, if we talk about a very large set of consumers who don't want to be educated about sustainability, they don't want to take those measures. I think it took COVID to sort of make people realize that, okay, to buy less,
Yeah.
To maybe buy one piece, but buy one quality piece, reuse it and restyle it differently. Like whenever we're selling jewelry, and if somebody only wants to buy one piece, the first question is, how do I wear it? Where can I wear it? How will I style it? It's just about how you put a look together. So I think versatility plays a huge role. But coming to your question of sustainability, I think it's very important that the consumers also have this acceptance of brands, because
it cannot be just till the product and they come to the product, and after the product there is no story or a brand narrative they want to understand. We're supporting about 54 craftsmen in our organization, and everything is handcrafted. We know how much time it takes from one step to the sixth step of jewelry making, but it's very difficult to make a consumer understand that. And what happens is that these 54 craftsmen we're supporting their livelihood, we're supporting their craft, we're supporting handmade jewelry in such a big way. But I think what they more want to perceive is the look and vibe of the product, and then again the price. That's all. So I think it's very important we really bench on hand craftsmanship in a big way. And I think it's a two-way thing. We have to keep, grooming the consumer mindset on a very aggressive basis for them to come back to us and not say that, okay, why is it not at a lower price? Why is it so expensive? There's a lot of effort going on into making one piece with hands versus doing it with a machine. And then, of course, the kind of detailing and intricacy you add to it, and then the other, costs which involve in it, is very difficult to explain to them. But at the end of the day, if you want to groom your clients, you have to be a bit aggressive in your marketing about it. That's all I can say. Because there are so many things we do not even talk to the client about with respect to sustainability, and which we do for our own, company, keeping the people in our company in a safe environment and cautious. So it's very important that clients also try to groom themselves about the sustainability part of it, just apart from not just doing CSR activities.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great point that you raised as well, because I feel like this cheaper, faster way of doing things, whether it's with fashion or whether it's like even ordering something online, we're so accustomed to these very quick, like a day-long delivery turnarounds, that we cannot, actually just slow down to take into account that if you have to make something from scratch using your hands, it takes a long process, and ultimately it's also valuing the labor at a certain cost or at a certain price, because if you actually believe and if you actually want to see more of a specific kind of artisan design or handcrafted design, then you have to pay the person who's making it a minimum living wage, or at least more than that, so they can continue making that, right? But people are still sort of like just looking for the cheaper alternative because we're so accustomed, like we've been, brainwashed into this very like jaldi economy, essentially.
That's absolutely true. And this whole thing of just sending something in a day, that's why this quick fix works.
Exactly.
Things never last long. You look at these brands who are trying to copy or trying to make something faster and selling it and doing things with a quick turnaround. I mean, they really don't end up they're just doing it for the money. And at the end of the day, fine, everybody wants to make money, but there has to be, you have to stick to some values yourself.
Also, a bigger purpose, like I think there has to be a bigger brand goal and a bigger brand purpose. I think that's very important, and that's what I feel like. That's where I feel like as a brand we've evolved. So when we started, it was very different. Now, if you see, there are many collections we like to launch, but it's just not like you have to produce. So even like I remember last year, collection after collection, we were giving something out because the consumer also wanted something new. So I just feel like, like internationally, they come up with 2 lines very clearly, and then they just focus on producing maybe move-ons. But even that can't work because as a designer, how much can you keep producing? I mean, I'm just talking about from a design perspective. You have so many designs you make, and then you have to market those designs. Which ones become iconic? Which ones don't become iconic? The ones which don't become iconic, they absolutely go into a waste because they don't sell well. You have to recycle them. So it's a whole process as well. So I feel like smaller curated lines is something which we as a brand actually have taken. I mean, we decided that we'll go a little slow this year, and not because the economy is bad. I just feel like the economy is actually going to come back very soon, but people are also looking to get something new. But I think more important is to have tighter curation so that you as a brand are focusing on what you really want to deliver and give.
Yeah, and when it comes to supply chains as well, there's been a lot of progress in terms of different kinds of technologies, or with brands, like you said, that you're focusing on a smaller, more curated list for the next quarter. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on some of this. Like, for example, there's blockchain technology that's being used to increase and promote transparency in supply chains. And when it comes to vegan leather, I know that this is a growing industry, and they're trying to innovate with pineapple and apple as well, which I think is very exciting. And of course, with fashion brands now, I know that there are a few boutique brands in the UK, and there are possibly a few here as well in Mumbai, that are subscribing to this made-to-order kind of production. So where they put out the designs that they are going to have in the next season, whether it's fall or spring, but they will only produce it depending on the demand they have for a top or a skirt. So what do you think? How can India sort of get on board with all of these different developments?
No, I think it's a great idea. Like a bunch of brands who we look up to internationally did a show this year, and they just went on pre-order. It's a great way where you're also assessing what the consumers are liking by kind of analyzing the kind of orders you're getting on a product. For example, if it's a bag or a piece of a necklace, you're able to assess, okay, what's getting more orders. So you do your data analysis, you figure out what's doing well, and you produce accordingly. You're not producing the entire collection and sitting down on the entire collection and wondering, okay, what will sell and what will not sell. I feel that is a format which we as designers and consumers both need to understand. And consumers need to be more patient on this front because, again, if you're pre-ordering, there has to be a certain amount of lead time to produce those pieces because it's all handmade, and the kind of quality you want to deliver, it can't be done within 2 days or 3 days. So I feel like this is something which will really, really stop wastage, and I think it will lead to massive reduction in water waste, especially because our industry, fashion as a whole, I'm not talking about jewelry, but clothing too, there is massive consumption of water. It's crazy, like the amount of water which we as a industry use and waste and keep wasting. I think it is something which we sort of need to just be more mindful towards. I think that's very important. So I feel like this is something which is a great thing which brands internationally have already adapted to. I mean, people have already been doing that. A show happens, it's on pre-order, or it's a made to order, like you said, and then brands produce. They're not producing everything altogether.
Yeah, that also kind of helps you manage wastage and purchase, also helps you maintain your P&L in a more healthy format. You're not just over purchasing, you're not just over wasting, and a lot of inventory died down because it is not being sold. So I think this is an important initiative, but I think it will take time for it to come at some point. It would not happen immediately. Pandemic has taught everybody to slow down. However, we need to still groom the economy and the consumer about firstly being patient to get their product since it takes time to make it. I think that this has to take place in a few steps and over a period of time. People are understanding that they need to, slow down, but they still don't understand what does slow down mean. Slowing down is primarily just trying to focus on buying few things, but more well done things, not just trying to consume fast. And that will also help economy not to have so much wastage. Fast fashion actually has led to so much wastage. I mean, I've been reading BOF reports for the past 2-3 years. They constantly talk about the wastage big brands suffer from. I'm not talking about fast fashion brands, but big brands because they have to keep up with the fast fashion pace. So the moment the consumer slows down, and we have to, I think the brands have to kind of make the consumer slow down by giving them quality, by making them understand that patience is important, by making them understand the impact of fast fashion and not trying to achieve things on a faster pace. And we ourselves as brands to also not, overproduce, maybe have more patience in our sales and do smarter strategies around our inventory and when we're doing brand launches. A lot of people have started focusing on, pre-orders. I think pre-order might be the name of the game, which most of the brands should follow in the coming time. This will not only help them save their own capital investment, but also understand what should be the way forward for consumers. And this will also train consumers to kind of make this also as a part of their shopping, category that, okay, it's not just shopping at the moment and getting it within a day or going and picking it up from the store, but also doing pre-orders and having the patience to, kind of get it on time. And the companies on the other hand to assess that, okay, this is the kind of inventory we need to make for the season.
Yeah, like have sort of a reorientation, right?
Yes, exactly.
Now, we've talked about a lot of different things, and I'm sensing there's like a lot of synergy. And of course, you guys agree on a lot of different things. But I'm just curious to know, what is it like sort of navigating being sisters and being business partners? How do you think that affects Outhouse, or what Outhouse does, or how you relate to consumers, trends, etc.? Like, how do you think that translates onto your business relationship?
Sanchi, we are asked this question very often, and I want to talk about partnerships in general. Most partnerships fail because it's not about synergies or, being siblings or being friends and building something. It's just that you don't have the same point of view and you don't have the same vision. When you are far apart from these two aspects, it's very difficult to build any kind of relationship when it comes to work. Because when you build something or you start with something, you need to know much before where you're going and where you're headed to. So I think Kavya and I, before we even started our business, as kids also, we were always very kind of aware where we wanted to go, where we wanted to lead our life to. We were very ambitious in school with whether it was athletics or coming first in art competitions, or we were very competitive kids in school, and we used to motivate each other that, okay, we need to do this to get to this point. And somehow we understood that we synchronized with each other's energies and had started building on the same visions in life. So we have had many fights, and we still do have many fights, which are very healthy. Now they're just much more mature and get resolved way faster because we believe in having a conversation. Back in the day, we used to have a fight and not have a conversation, and that could build up into other further thoughts. So I think it just becomes more mature over a period of time, and you also become evolved. However, the basic, which is a root that keeps you, together and keep going towards a business goal together, being siblings, is that you really are passionate and are really vision oriented towards similar things in life.
Also I feel like, Sanjay, sometimes you also have a similar goal, but I think the drive, having an equivalent drive is very important, because I know so many people become very complacent. I mean, wherever they are, with their brand, and they don't want to evolve, they don't want to move forward. So I feel like with me and Sasha, that's always been the case. Like if one person feels like, oh my God, we're going a bit slow, we push each other. So I think as business partners, that is really important because you're bringing out the best of each other to the table. It's never like, okay, it's accepted. Like tomorrow she does something and I'm like, no, we could work on this better. Same thing with me also. So I feel that is very important, bringing a different dynamic personality to the brand. I think that sort of has helped us, and that's what also keeps us going.
I think that's really inspiring because I know that at least I know that you've been in this game for almost a decade now, but perhaps when you start out, or at least I have friends who have started out, and if they're in partnership with their friends or if they are in partnership with their significant others, there can be a little bit of that jostling for that authority, or perhaps having a say, or because sometimes it can be really hard to distinguish between the personal and the professional. So there can be sometimes this clash, if you will.
So clashes do definitely happen, but they're not to a point. Like I know so many businesses, like you're saying, they literally shut down. They're like, okay, we can't work with each other. So that's what I would not say that's ever, because the main goal is one, the vision's one. So if anything which you're adding value, like tomorrow if she says something to me or I say something to her, it's always for the better of the brand, because we're looking for the brand. It's not like what we are going to gain personally out of this. So I think because what the brand is, what we are. So I feel that projection and that love towards the brand, towards each other is very important. And if you don't criticize things which are, bad, you will never also grow and evolve. I feel like you sort of feel like, okay, whatever is good, it's moving. Like many Indian brands, like chalta hai, chalne do, it's okay, we're moving, it's floating. It can't work like that. I feel like if you want to reach a certain level in your business or your brand image or the projection or how you want the brand to be seen as, you have to constantly sort of evolve. And that takes the good and the bad both, It can't be all good. So it has to be a mix of both.
Yeah, so can you sort of give any tips on conflict resolution, which, I got a strong sense of how you both focus on that element of your relationship as business partners. And I was just wondering if you have any tips that you would like to share with people, just not even people who are working with people that they are related to or they are in relationships with, but also just for small teams, especially during these times, which is so unprecedented and can be quite challenging as well, running a small business during a pandemic and a lockdown.
See, I definitely feel that when you talk about conflicts, you're always angry when a conflict happens, or you're thinking about something that could lead to a conflict, right? I feel like when you are going through a conflict and you're over the conflict, you need to understand. I think the best way to look at it is that you look at the good sides of the person and what they bring to the business, what they bring, as, how would I say that, in terms of their credibility to the business. And whereas when things are concerned with things which are in your mind that could lead to a conflict, it's very important to have a conversation and a dialogue. I would say that, okay, you put your points out there and you reason it out. It can lead into an argument, but it's important to speak up and reason it out and then arrive at a decision. What happens is people keep things to themselves, and over a period of time they get boiled up, things are not discussed. So transparency doesn't remain. It's very important to have transparency of your thoughts, of your ideas. And even if you have a certain point of view, it's very important to speak up. And at the same time, when things become a bit messy and they're very minute as a conflict, you need to understand that if it's, for example, Kabi and I have been into work together for 8 years now, that would be our business relationship. I believe that it's very important to see what good they bring to the table, or the little small of a conflict that has happened for 5 minutes in 365 days. So it's very important to look at the bigger picture of things than just trying to look at the small, minute picture of things.
And I also feel like, when you're working together with your friends, I think egos have to be kept aside. Because, sometimes when you have ego and, like you said, my word matters the most, my department, it has to be looked at in a very
Holistic
in a
way.
very wholesome way. Like tomorrow, if something is wrong within my department, and if I don't accept it, it's going to hamper the company, not anybody else. It's going to be reflecting on the brand directly. So I think it's very, very important to be open, number one, to sort of hear and understand what the other person is trying to say. Leave your ego aside. I'm not saying don't have ego, but also be understanding, because tomorrow, see in business, very small little things lead to a massive fight, and they keep growing up and they become very big. So I think that's very important. Like you, either starting as a friend or with a spouse, with anybody. I think that understanding and defining that line. Okay, we'll do this. I will do this, and we'll finish it. That's the most important thing. And I think picking each other up. So I feel like Sasha said, rather than looking at the side of, oh, there's so many issues, you should look at the positive side of what the other person is bringing on the table.
And what is next for Outhouse? We've talked about some of the fine jewelry brands, and we've talked about how consumer tastes have evolved. Would you ever consider foraying into fine jewelry, or jewelry that is more perhaps traditionally used for occasions like weddings in India?
So, we've been meaning to venture into fine jewelry. I wouldn't say specifically into wedding jewelry, because that's not the design language of the brand, but more on the fine, pieces which could be worn for a nice engagement, but they're more so our design language is more art deco. It's more inspired from our travel. It's never what is traditional. So it'll never delve into the language of traditional Indian jewelry, if that's what the question is. But yes, working with precious metal and doing pieces which are more contemporary, more, how do I put this to
more pieces of art. I think if we happen to go into fine jewelry, which definitely will happen one day, it's always been on top of our minds. It would be more pieces of art. It would be something that we would want to sell and auction with Sotheby's, or go to the Vegas show to be amidst people who are doing something like this. I don't think so we will venture out into doing anything for the occasion market, because if we go fine, we'll go very, very fine. And for me, fine is something how we have jewels from Jar or Cindy Chow. These people are curators and artists in jewelry, and I think we would like to groom ourselves into jewelry artists versus just trying to make a commercial occasion jewelry selling brand. I think that would not be something that we would do.
Yeah, and I think that's something really exciting. I mean, I'm really excited to see that evolution and what you and your ethos brings into that sort of segment. And I think my final question to you then is, what do you think the jewelry industry, consumer preferences, etc., is going to look like after the pandemic has sort of subsided or has become more manageable? Or what do you hope that consumers and people remember going forward?
I think consumers in general, once everything opens up, there's going to be a very big celebratory mood. Look at suffering. After suffering is overcome, as an emotion, or, bad phase is over and a certain routine has been disturbed, you feel very celebratory, because you're like, this is over, it's finally over. You feel a sense of feeling light and a lightness and wanting to celebrate, go out, feel vibrant. I think there will be a lot of vibrance in personality, and people would be open to spending, which is very important for the economy at the moment, because if I do not go and purchase something from a person, that person will not be able to evolve and, put it into his cash flow and further. So economy it's a 360-degree thing. We help a person to, sustain their business, then they move forward and they go and purchase something. It's a vicious circle. So I think what I foresee, once the whole pandemic and the situation is over, that people will shop, but people will shop for amazing things. And it's very important to be amazing when you're bringing out in terms of your product categories or your designs, rather than doing just something which is regularized or can be available in any part of the world or is available on Pinterest or copied. I think people will have a lot of value for, because they would have also reserved, some people would have reserved some money, and some people would have not reserved money but want to spend to make themselves feel good. They might want to spend on quality and extravagant things, because they would be in a celebratory mood. And when you celebrate, you are an extravaganza in a sort. When it's a birthday, you feel very special. So I think there's going to be a special mood once this whole pandemic across the world is going to be over. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I also feel like a sense of being statement is going to come out because people would have really understood a different part of their personalities during the lockdown. And I think that will allow them to also celebrate the new individuals they are. So there's going to be a sense of statement, a sense of quality, a sense of vibrance when all this is over.
But I also feel like, I mean, for us, I just feel like the segment we are in, people are still buying jewelry because a lot of brides have sort of, who are having smaller weddings, like we have a vertical which is called Out as Bridal, who are having smaller weddings, they're coming to us because they don't want to spend too much on wearing real jewelry for a gathering of 15 to 20 people. They are buying jewelry for all their functions. So I feel there's also like the jewelry segment we are in. I feel like people have sort of moved towards this side because they feel they're more happy to buy an affordable piece of jewelry right now at this point. I'm talking about the current pandemic, rather than investing in something which they're not even going to be able to wear. You know, like we buy such heavy pieces and we keep it in a locker. So I have a lot of brides like who've been from London or from Canada who picked up the beautiful clearance we have, or something which is more like a piece of art, but they can wear later on as well. You know, it's not lying in a locker.
Yeah.
So for us, I would say that it's been good because people have sort of, good or bad, but I would say good mainly because people have sort of come to this jewelry with respect to their bridal, because people have been buying the day wear pieces for sure, but brides, see, weddings will never end, whether it's in India, whether it's in all the NRI.
And also, I also feel like a lot of part of a bridal is very, design oriented and looks very artistic. It's very away from the traditional set of bridal. Like I said about fine jewelry also, that even if we foray into fine jewelry, is going to be in a very artistic direction. So I think that people who have come back to us and are shopping from us for their bridal, there is definitely an affordability factor, but also people are very inclined towards a sense of design because it's very much that they can adapt to an occasion, but also wear it otherwise for other occasions which are just not wedding occasions. And a lot of our pieces of art, which are a part of our collection, are not the commercial aspect, are selling very well at this moment, which is actually a boost to, our also emotion at the moment, because sales have been pretty low before since the lockdown happened, and now everything is picking up. So it's a good energy.
Yeah. And once again, I just want to say it's been such a pleasure having you both on for this episode to talk about sustainability in jewelry design, to talk about Outhouse, and to just have this wonderful chat. Thank you so much once again for being here and for educating all of us listening in. And thank you for making time for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're most welcome. It was a pleasure as well, and nice also. And also, whenever you speak about your brand after a few days in a conversation with, in an interview, we always, it kind of also re-energized us. So it's been great. And thank you so much for having us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for being here. And that marks the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find all the relevant links and handles to know more about our guest this week in the episode description. If you have any feedback, suggestions, requests, or simply just want to get in touch with us, then please do head over to our podcast website. We are available to flag and say hi to via Facebook, Instagram, or email. Thank you and see you next week.